Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and today is going to be a news slash kind of discussion video. I know that a lot of people have already kind of been talking about this and making videos about it and stuff like that, but being a prominent data miner in the community, I wanted to at least throw my hat into the ring and not only educate all of you as to what's currently going on with SafetyNet right now, also give you my thoughts about the whole situation. I am also going to be drinking water because your boy's mad thirsty right now. And B, I apologize if you can hear my fan in the background because it is really hot right now outside. But let's go ahead and get into everything here. So we're going to structure this video, funny enough, in the same way it's yesterday's figure video. I'm going to give you the facts first and foremost. So I'm going to read you a bunch of tweets. It'll give you basically every piece of information that you're looking to know. And then I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on the matter. So let's go ahead and hop into it here. So first of all, if you are unfamiliar with SafetyNet in the first place, because I know that there is some confusion with what SafetyNet is and how it works and why we keep hearing about it being updated, so to speak, and all of this other stuff. So SafetyNet is essentially a program that a lot of games use, not just Dokkan, to essentially check if you're cheating or not, using mods, using hacks, that type of stuff, right? It can also be used to prevent data mining for other games, obviously not just Dokkan. It has a lot of different uses for it, right? But TLDR, it's basically like almost adding a security guard at the gate of your game, right? Would kind of be a good way to put it in layman's terms. It protects the game's internals, I guess one might say, and protects the game from any nefarious activities. Now, SafetyNet has been being slowly rolled out for Dokkan for some time now. I believe it was last year that we first heard about any form of SafetyNet's implementation, and it has been basically being put out in little bits as time has gone on. If you guys remember, for a while on Dokkan, we were also experiencing quite a bit of lag on some of the menus, and that was actually because of SafetyNet, because SafetyNet was basically having to, every single time that you put an input in to a menu or anything like that, or clicked on an event, or clicked on, you know, go to the events or go to quests or something like that, it would have to make a request to the server, and it would have to make a check to the server to make sure that everything was all right on their end, run it through their system, i.e. SafetyNet, and then send the data back to you. So it took a really long time for things to load. But obviously they have now optimized it a little bit. A lot of time has passed since then, and we have arrived to today. So in the news today for JP Dokkan, we did get this notice right here. Essentially, what this says, Carrie summarizes, is that devices with root/jailbreak, a modified version of Dokkan, or hardware that has been modified won't be able to log into Dokkan anymore. SafetyNet's full implementation has arrived. So, if you are unfamiliar with the concept of root and jailbreak, or a modified version of Dokkan, obviously modified hardware is basically just a modified device. That's a pretty simple one, right? Rooting or jailbreaking your device is essentially like, in layman's terms, it's hacking it, right? That kind of sounds more like movie-esque than it actually is. Essentially, it's just cracking it open so you can do a lot more with your device, right? Basically, a lot of things that are restricted on the normal version of your phone, when you jailbreak it, right, or root it, rooting is for Android and jailbreaking is for Apple, you can do a lot more on your device than you would normally be able to, and you can tinker with some settings, add some different software, add some different programs, that you normally wouldn't be able to add to your device, look through some things that you normally wouldn't be able to look through in terms of files and stuff like that, right? Plenty of people have rooted Androids and jailbreaked iPhones throughout the years. I'm sure jailbreak might ring a bell for some of you, because I know back in junior high, a lot of kids like to jailbreak their iPods, because, you know, you could get like cool icons on the home screen and for the clock and on your menu and stuff like that, right? Again, I'm trying to make this as easy to understand as possible, because I know not everybody is, you know, as into the nitty-gritty as this stuff, or is completely familiar with this type of stuff, right? So essentially, in layman's terms, it's cracking that void wide open so you have basically near full access. A modified version of Dokkan, though, is essentially like a version of Dokkan that has had a couple of things changed in the the app itself, right? So that it works with certain things. For those of you who are familiar with Uni Dokkan, you will probably be familiar with this concept. Back when Uni Dokkan was around, a Dokkan mod loader and mod launcher, you needed a specific Dokkan APK, which is basically like an exe file on a computer, for Uni Dokkan to work, right? Because this specific APK was meant to work with the mods, right? It had support, it had a little bit of, you know, modification to the app itself so that it could work with Uni Dokkan and it could work with these mods, right? That is a modified version of Dokkan. There are still some programs that use that as well. I think there are still some that are around today as well. Now, knowing all of that, what does all of this mean, right? Because for the average player, this might not really affect you, right? Most of you who play Dokkan are probably playing Dokkan on a phone, right? You're probably playing your global or JP version on your Apple or Android phone, just stock as it has come, right? Maybe some of you on Apple, of course, had to make a Japanese iTunes account to get Dokkan, or for us on Android, we just use Ku app, right? So, this means a couple of things, right? And I'm going to kind of give you the lowdown here with a bunch of different tweets. For one, we have this comment from Carrie here, which says, this basically means RIP farming bots as well for those getting their high hopes up. So, farm bots, I'm sure a lot of you have been familiar with them over the years. We've had a few of them. Of course, we've had one a long time, funny enough, made by Carrie himself. We've had more recently another farm bot that has existed, and they essentially just go through Dokkan and farm up every event in the game for you, farm up links, farm up medals, that sort of thing, without you actually having to play a game. You transfer your account to this farm bot and then it farms it up for you, right? It's not really hacking, it's basically just like making it more efficient, but you're not going to be able to do that anymore because those bots required a modified version of the APK, I believe is how they utilize that. So that is no longer going to be an option for people. We have our boy Cody, who is also another data miner and just general, you know, person in the community who provides a lot of great insight in the game and stuff like that. Things that will no longer function with SafetyNet. Private servers that access the main server through a modified application, like we talked about a little bit before, unless you're really good at coding like Carrie, because with KX Dokkan, right, it's a local thing. So KX Dokkan probably won't be affected because of the fact that with, you know, KX, you know, it's not connecting to Bandai's server. Bots, just in general, right? Talking about farm bots and that sort of thing. Asset downloaders, which that one affects me, and I'm also gonna, you know, share that part of this whole thing with you once I get to my thoughts on the situation. Rooted devices, so if your device is rooted, you won't be able to play Dokkan on it, unfortunately. And emulators will also be essentially knocked out of the park now because of SafetyNet. You will no longer be able to play on emulators. A lot of apps and gacha games especially have really not liked emulators for a long time. I'm kind of surprised that Dokkan has honestly stood the test of time in that regard. Basically every new gacha game that comes out, unless it's directly supported with the emulator, like we have Grand Cross that literally has, like, I don't want to say a port, but you can play it in widescreen on BlueStacks, right? they're not really allowing a lot of gacha games. I know Farm Hero doesn't allow it. I know that the new My Hero Academia Ultra Impact, I don't know about Strongest Hero, but Ultra Impact isn't allowed on emulators as well. And there is actually a little bit of a caveat to emulators that almost kind of didn't matter that SafetyNet is going to knock it out. It's just a little bit sooner than later, and we'll get to that with a Hydros tweet in a second. But this is basically the key points of what isn't going to be available any longer. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and take a look at what Hydros said here. It means emulators will be taken off in the process too. Like I said here, Ultra Impact has it. It's not like emulators, period. Private servers, bots, emulators, mods, all will be knocked off due to the SafetyNet implementation. There can be some workarounds maybe for private servers, but not worth it in his opinion. Means no more early showcases as well, and Dokkan content will most likely be getting a hard reboot. We also have this, which is what I was mentioning about the emulators. Just another thing about emulators, as games go on as such, with Dokkan, right, they start not supporting lower OS versions of Android and iOS once Dokkan says no more Android 7 or 8, and lower, most of, not all Android emulators will not work because they don't use Android 10, 11, etc. Even without SafetyNet, this would be an inevitable thing, and emulators would still go at some point regardless. So if you're unfamiliar with this, basically, it's not too complicated, right? Your phone updates, right? iOS has like iOS 9, 10, 11, 12. I think they're on 13. I don't have an iOS device, so I don't know what's the current one. But regardless, you know, Android also updates versions, you know, Android 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, right? And basically every app under the sun, or bare minimum like games, as they get bigger and as they get more powerful and as they update their game, most of the time they will not support older versions of, you know, smartphone software, essentially, with these different versions of Android and iOS. And so eventually emulators would probably kick the bucket, because of course, like Hydros mentioned, most of these emulators use older versions of Android, which kind of makes sense because obviously, you know, the older versions are less stable and whatnot. So yeah, unfortunately that kind of would have been the case at some point anyway. It's just kind of unfortunate that it's going to happen now. And the other thing to note that is a big factor of this, for people asking, QApp is still safe. So this is, of course, if you're on Android and you are playing JP Dokkan through there, when you download it off of QApp and install the APK that way, that is still fine. If you're curious why, essentially that is a technical, like, legitimate version of the Dokkan Battle application, just the Japanese version, right? It's the same thing that you would download off of the Japanese Google Play Store, or obviously an APK doesn't work on Apple, but it's basically the same app that you would download off of the Japanese App Store, right? Because it's a legitimate app with the proper certification, right? It's not a modified version of the APK that you're downloading off of some suspicious website. So QApp is just fine, right? And QApp is, you know, the place where you can get any of that type of stuff, and it's like the ones with the proper certificates. So QApp isn't some, you know, back alley place with all of that. So that's basically all of the facts for you. That is everything that this is going to affect. Now, right now, we are not completely sure, you know, how hard this is going to hit some of these things. From what other things that I've been seeing, essentially it's going to be near impossible for any of these things to work, if at all. That being this nice little summary by Cody of all these different things here. Again, like a couple people have mentioned, there may be workarounds, but it'll be very difficult to find a workaround if possible. Now, what this means for you, right, as a player, is maybe not much in terms of the, actual game. It's chugging that water so fast. It is probably just going to be, you know, you're going to keep playing the game as normal, because most likely you're just playing on a normal device and playing the game. Now, in terms of you outside of the game, though, Most likely this is going to mean a lot of data mining is going to be a lot more difficult. Obviously, for those of us using asset downloaders, with those gone, it's going to be even more difficult to get assets out of the game. And what I always refer to as the old-fashioned method in my videos, you also needed a rooted device, or just like a rooted emulator, right? Because a lot of those emulators you can just turn root on and off. To be able to, get the assets manually, quote unquote, out of the game and then extract them and unencrypt. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words because I'm talking so fast. So what that means as well is that it will be a lot more difficult to get early information, and you might not see early information as much as you have in the current climate of Dokkan. It is kind of interesting because obviously a lot of people who play the game now weren't even around during the time when data mining wasn't even a thing, or the only reason we knew about units right early was V-Jump, basically, and the only way that we knew about units was when they released and their information was released in-game, and, they dropped in-game, and literally the in-game teasers was basically all the news that we had, right? It is kind of a crazy climate that Dokkan has sort of evolved into over time. Now, let me give you my thoughts on the situation, because I know I have a lot more of a kind of varied perspective on this whole situation. So, this also kind of changes a little bit depending on what aspect of this that we're talking about here, right? Of course, for Dokkan itself, SafetyNet implementation is a good thing because it just means a better game, a more secure game. And I know a lot of people are speculating that the reason why they're doing this now is to coincide with version Z, because of course, from what we've heard from version Z, it is going to make Dokkan a lot better, update the engine, update a lot of much needed things. And so it makes sense that if they're going to have this big overhaul of Dokkan, they're going to be doing it, at a time where they're also updating their security for the game as well, right? For private servers, that one, right, is definitely a little bit unfortunate in the regard of we're not going to get early showcases anymore, but in the same time, I do think that in a partial way, it is more healthy for the game not to have these, alternative ways to kind of access the units at these different, potential levels, because then it's like more organic, right? The only way that you'll be able to see it is if you get it in the game. And of course, I suppose if you watch a showcase of someone who decides to rainbow the unit. Now, what that does mean, though, for showcases is a little bit unfortunate, because now you're not going to have as many options for showcases, because the only people who are going to be able to showcase a unit at rainbow is people who go out of the way to rainbow the unit, of course, unless somebody, of course, finds a workaround for one of these private servers. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out from a content perspective, because that's really the only thing that's like, at least for me, kind of the unfortunate thing about the private server thing, because whenever I see unit, I like to not only try it out myself, but also see it from a various amount of content creators to see different kinds of gameplay and get different kinds of opinions on it. But of course, not everybody that plays the game is a whale, so unfortunately, a lot of those opinions may not be, I guess, presented right away, because of course not everybody's going to be rainbowing the unit. But I think in terms of the game's health itself, it is a very good thing, because it just allows the game to be, again, more natural, I suppose, in the progression. It is kind of a weird, perspective, though, I will say, because it's like, I understand Bandai's thought process is probably like, oh, well, now they have no way to see the rainbow units, so they're going to have to rainbow it themselves if they really want to see the unit in action instead of using it in a private server. But I also feel like, as weird as this sounds, private servers also almost helped in a weird sort of way, because then people who might not be inclined to go hard for a unit may see how it works with, you know, the rainbow star attached to it on a private server, and then end up, you know, really liking the unit and going in, or vice versa, right? But that also doesn't take into account the people who literally, like, just play the game on the private server. Then in that regard, right, that's not really cool to me, and especially if you use that as your main account, or try to pass it off as your main account. Or, you know, if that was just like, you're like, oh, well, screw the normal version, I just have this. Obviously, you know, it's, I guess, sort of the mentality in that regard. But for the game's overall health, I do think private servers kicking the bucket is a very good thing. In terms of bots, right, obviously this is primarily referring to farm bots. I think that this one is literally only a good thing, right? I suppose the only downside of this is if you're lazy and you don't want to, like, play the game, so you let the game get played for you so you can play the game. I don't know. Obviously, you could see that there's some flawed logic there. But I think that this one is literally only a positive thing because, you know, not only does it prevent, well, farming and, you know, more suspicious activity like that, and maybe some more suspicious farming services, it is also a thing that has, you know, kind of become a you know, popular thing, air quotes, right, in the community. It'll also prevent a lot of the problems with the friend list. Because, of course, even during some higher ranks, of course, the higher that you climb the ranks, the less that you see that. But the problem with farm bots is that people use them to make new accounts. And then, because people make these new accounts, right, they charge up the account, get it chock full of stones, summon, you know, and then they leave the account forever and forget about it, right? Or throw it to the side, or don't do anything with it, or don't awaken the friend leader, you know, or put any dupes into them, or whatever, right? And it leaves a lot of, like, N units on the friends list, right? And it leaves a lot of, like, SSRs on the friends list and stuff like that. And keep in mind, because they farmed through the account, the rank is a relatively high rank. Of course, in the lower ranks of Dokkan, you expect to see those type of units, and it's not really a problem, right? Especially since, you know, the content that you can beat at that point in the game, you know, doesn't really require that high-level units. But, of course, anything basically ranked 200 and up, you know, you don't want that on your friend list. You're looking for some decent leaders, you know, even if they're 55%. You still probably want a category lead, or, you know, 120 lead, or an LR, or something like that, right? So by getting rid of farm bots, that will no longer be an increasing issue unless they decide to clear out accounts that haven't been used in a fat minute, or maybe they fully identify them as farmed accounts or something like that. I don't know if the accounts that are already there are necessarily going away, because I don't know if they can technically do that, because, like, A, I don't know how they can prove that, because a lot of the farm bots are really smart in the way that they farm the game, and B, I don't know if they can technically delete someone's account, because then it's like, you know, imagine if they came back to get it one day, even if it's, like, really far in the future, and then they can't get their account. So I don't know if they can technically get rid of all the ones that are there, but certainly it'll prevent any from popping up in the future. Now, this one is a big one for me, right? Asset downloaders and rooted devices. Rooted devices kind of has two sides to that one a little bit, because it kind of coincides with getting the assets. But let's talk about the asset downloader first. With the asset downloader, obviously, this is the basically easiest and most efficient way that a lot of us data miners get the assets. It's not the way that I always did it, but after a little while, you know, I was approached by some people who had some different asset bots, was given some after meeting some people in the community, so on and so forth. And essentially what it does is it goes through the new data download, it takes a look at all the new files that have been added, it unencrypts them for me, right? It basically extracts them, and then just puts them all into PNG format, or, you know, whatever it is that, you know, the extracted file ends up as, right? Obviously, this is really unfortunate for news, right? Because then, of course, it'll be a little bit harder to see what's coming from the assets. Now, that isn't really as big of a deal because a lot of the time, Dokkan announces this stuff before we get, like, a data download for it. And then the data download just kind of reinforces and builds upon what we already knew and gives us new information about it. Of course, unless we're talking about, like, the couple of times they've stumbled it when they've done live stream presentations and then they've done a data download and shown everything that was going to be shown in the live presentation and literally ruin their own presentation. So for that aspect, it'll be good. But for me personally, obviously, if the asset downloader dies, that is basically going to be the end of me getting assets, unfortunately. Because I'll talk about the rooted devices in a second, but that is a primary way that I get assets, and unfortunately there's just going to be no way for me to get them anymore. I won't be going anywhere. I still plan on making Dokkan content. I still plan on streaming Dokkan content. I still plan on running the Dokkan Assets Twitter account. Your boy is always brainstorming things for it and always trying to find workarounds, even if I'm not talking workarounds in this specific case of like ways to get the assets, right? Like from the files or something like that. Your boy's always got something cooking up in the cranium, so don't you worry about that. But unfortunately, that will maybe mean an end to the physical Dokkan assets, right? Seeing all the individual pieces that make up the essays, all the different assets that, you know, make up the LR card arts and the sprites and, you know, the different event assets and story assets and all that type of stuff. Because as well, this kind of goes into the rooted devices thing. If you're playing on a rooted device, then that just kind of sucks, right? If your device just happens to be rooted or jailbreaked and you're just playing Dokkan on it because you just use the rooted or jailbroken for other stuff, then that's just kind of like F. I'm sorry, bro. But of course, if you're using the root to, you know, get files from Dokkan, like I do, because that is a way that I did it originally, right? I would literally just root the device, and then I have a program that I'm able to then look through Dokkan's files, right? And then pull them out, put them on my computer, and then unencrypt them, extract them, and then post them, right? Because we won't be able to play on rooted devices anymore, I believe that also, you know, really won't work anymore because basically every program, at least that I'm aware of, needs a device to be rooted for that to work. And the other thing that you might be thinking is like, well, you could just, you know, basically like download everything and then download everything on an unrooted device and then reroute it, which that is a ton of work to do to root and unroot a device. Like, it's like a process. But the easiest way to do that, funny enough, is our last point here, emulators. And emulators will also be going down again, and those were gonna go away at some point anyway. Emulators are probably the least harmful out of, funny enough, I think anything on this list. And I don't even really think that the asset downloader or the rooted devices are harmful at all, right? I mean, unless you're someone who's in the boat of like data mining or getting the information early, right? Isn't necessarily the best thing. I am definitely on the other side of the spectrum where, funny enough, not only do I think it makes the game more fun for me personally, but I also think that it helps develop more hype for upcoming units and makes people more inclined to summon for these upcoming units, being able to get excited with leaks and getting early information, you know. It's that sort of childlike wonder that you get where it's like, you know, oh, you know, I'm seeing this thing early before it's supposed to be here. Oh, it's so cool, you know. And not only that, but then seeing all the different assets and the way that the game is made, personally, for me, is really cool, and I know a lot of people other enjoy that. Also enjoy that as well, and I think just kind of perpetuates in your mind, wow, I really want this unit in the game now. But with the emulators, right, of course, it's just unfortunately won't be able to play on it, especially if you don't have a phone or a tablet or something like that that could play it. You're just not going to be able to play it on your computer. But the emulator was also essential for doing it the old-fashioned way without the asset downloader. So because that's going to be an F in the chat, unfortunately, I will not be able to do it that way anymore. So, in terms of me, right, I am going to try and find a workaround specifically for the assets, right? I'm not as hung up on the whole private server thing. I do videos on it occasionally, right? And that sort of thing. Obviously, my thing is Dokkan assets. Look at the name of this channel and this Twitter account. Go figure. But with the assets, right, I am going to try and find a way to be able to still get the assets if I can, right? It is entirely possible because unfortunately now it's just a waiting game until this is fully implemented because again, it just got announced today. We're going to have to wait and see, basically. We're just going to have to play the waiting game to see if there is, you know, a way that we can do this. I am already exploring some avenues on that front for the assets because, of course, if I can, I obviously don't want to stop because, of course, I enjoy it and I enjoy running this Twitter account and I enjoy sharing it with you and I enjoy sharing how the game works with all of you because I think it's so cool getting to see the back end of one of your favorite games. So I'm going to do everything in my power to still attempt to get the assets. If I can't, again, I will try and brainstorm some ideas that I can do in terms of still trying to get them maybe in a way that's already like in the game, just base. I'll have to figure that out though. Like I said, again, I'm already brainstorming some ideas for, you know, different things that could happen. The two things though that I would say would probably be, or three, I guess, that would really be affected in terms of the channel that surprisingly enough probably won't be affected is one, I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, oh, the OSTs are unfortunately not going to be able to update any, or not update, I'm sorry. You're not going to be able to get the OSTs anymore. Basically, we're just not going to be able to get the OSTs early in this case now. I'm not going to be able to get the actual file and then extract it and extend it. Literally, what I'll just do instead is when the event comes out, I'll just get to the stage that the new OST plays in, sit in the stage, record it with my Elgato because it's just recording the game's in-game audio directly and it's high quality, right? Literally just record the OST, have it play for like 10 minutes, and then put my usual image that I put for the OST on there, and then upload it to YouTube. So, unless they literally disable music in the game, that's not going to go away. So, don't worry about that. I will still be doing that, because that's literally super easy and takes no back-end shenanigans for that to work. So, don't worry about the OSTs going away, because that's not going to go away either. And I know how popular those videos are on my channel. Obviously, that's not something I want to go away either. And of course, I use my channel to listen to the Dokkan OSTs myself in like my daily life and on my streams and stuff like that. So of course, I don't want to lose that either. In terms of the essays, most of the time with those, I literally just, you know, nab them from the Twitter account and re-upload them, right? Like, that's basically what everybody does as well. Obviously, that's not something as well that's going to go away unless they literally stop uploading the essays to Twitter, which, no. So, that'll still happen, so no need to worry about that. Unfortunately, though, the basically musicless, what I like to call the audio-only active skills, will probably die if I can't get on those files, because, of course, if I can't get the actual audio files for the active skills, you know, without any music in the background, then unfortunately those little memes might end up kicking the bucket as well, unless Dokkan decides to upload them to Twitter without the music in them. The sound effects will still be there, but then it will be a little bit more crisper audio. Global has been doing that recently, funny enough. I think they finally realized that they just can't get it right with the OST volume, so they just said screw it, because they saw so many people complaining, I assume anyway, and they just nixed the OSTs for that. So, if that continues to happen, then maybe I'll be able to do it that way. But yeah, well, that one's a little bit more tentative. Also, not as big of a deal as the other two. So, that is basically everything that I have for you today, though. I hope you guys enjoyed this video nonetheless. I know this was a little bit of a long one, but of course I wanted to give my thoughts and opinions on everything, as well as give you guys all of the information that I could, so you can fully understand the situation and what's going on. Again, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All I can ask you to do, of course, is like and subscribe if you're new. I ain't going to be going anywhere, even if we're not going to be able to do any data mining. I will still be covering Dokkan content on this channel. I'll still be uploading Dokkan content. I'll still be doing, you know, the old Dokkan assets thing, just like I always have. Maybe just in a little bit of a different way than before. So no need to worry about that. I still love the game, and I still love interacting with the community, so your boy is here to stay. They can't stop me that easy. So, regardless of all that, let me know what you think in the comment section below, please, because I really, really want to know what you have to say about all of this, your opinions on everything that we have discussed today. If you agree with what I say, if you disagree with what I say too, definitely let me know in the comments section below. But other than that, hope you guys have a grand old day. Of course, I will keep you guys updated as this situation continues, whether that be, if it is something that I could make a video on, of course I'll make a video on it, or community tab, of course, follow the Twitter account, right, all that good stuff. Hope you guys have a good one regardless, though. Here's to the future, Dokkan, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.